Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kathy. I apologize that I don't have the camera on right now, but I've been ill for the past few days and it's just not appropriate to be on camera at this time. With that said, today apparently is a landmark date in the case styled as Idaho versus Kohberger. We had received multiple reports late in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States, which would have been mid afternoon in Boise, that apparently the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, has pled guilty in a deal that apparently is intended to save his life. This is what we had learned from multiple news sources that had been following the case. I did not feel comfortable in reporting this to you until I saw a notification on the Goncalves family page. The Goncalves family, as you know, lost their daughter, Kaylee, in the catastrophic events that happened at 1122 King Road on November 13th, 2022. And they have been very active and vocal in the case basically from the beginning. And Mr. Goncalves has followed my page and my podcast a few times and left some nice feedback for me. I've tried to remain neutral on the matter. However, when I did see some things that were blatantly disturbing, such as the so-called alibi defense that was not an alibi defense, it never was an alibi defense, I expressed my concern. And I also expressed my concern this past week that Judge Hippler had seemed to tread over into the trier of facts role in coming to some of the conclusions that he did. So I've hit hard, I think, on both sides when I needed to, but I've tried to stay very neutral. So today we began hearing that Mr. Kohberger had pled guilty, and there is still nothing up on the official court documents, which I have watched like a hawk in this case since I started the Idaho versus Kohberger podcast some almost 750 episodes ago. I have a background in podcasting, and I felt a couple of years ago that I wanted to convert my podcast to true crime. And when I learned of this case, I knew that it had to be, if I was going to cover the Kohberger case, it was going to be just this case and nothing else. And for the past 750 episodes on the podcast, which streams on Spotify and Amazon and across the world in a number of platforms, I announced way back at episode 1, or the intro, that the purpose of the podcast was to search for the truth, no matter where it went, of what happened to Kaylee and Maddie and Xana and Ethan on November 13th, 2022. And it appears today that we may have some answers. Again, we learned from multiple sources that Mr. Kohberger has apparently entered into a plea deal. It's not confirmed yet on the court docket. I have to caution that to you. However, in reading the notification that is up on the Goncalves family page on Facebook, the Goncalves family is confirming that this plea deal was made apparently without their consent, because they were very much wanting this matter to go to trial. And if Mr. Kohberger was found guilty, they wanted him subjected to capital punishment. So they're very upset, apparently, from their notification. It's the Goncalves family page on Facebook. So I did not feel comfortable on coming here live today until I read that. And so it appears, I can't imagine that they would have reported that this is not true if it's not. Again, multiple sources, including Kaylee's family, have reported that Bryan C. Kohberger has agreed to enter a plea of guilty in this case. And whenever we've done our podcast, we've said, if we've said it once, we've said it 1,000 times. Mr. Kohberger is considered innocent under the eyes of the law until or unless he does one of two things. He is either adjudicated guilty in what was to have been the forthcoming trial of mid-August 2025, or he pleads guilty. And so now again, we're hearing from multiple sources, including Kaylee's family, that Mr. Kohberger has taken a plea deal. We're going to, of course, wait for some official word from an official source through the court docket, or with the non-dissemination order. I can't imagine that the prosecution or the defense would be making this, or the prosecution is where we would be seeing that. Well, hey, everybody, thank you for joining us today. They say they got a letter. Could this be a leak? I'm sick to my stomach. Hi, everybody. Co-conspirator, maybe. Don't know. Hi, thank you for being here. I was thinking this might happen. Well, in going to Robert Lonsky's question, you were thinking that this might happen. There was a heck of a lot of effort to save Mr. Kohberger's life. There was something like 20, we learned of in the court documents, in the response to the motion in opposition to continue the trial, that there was a massive amount of documents for the mitigation phase. There were a number of experts. There was a lot of time that was spent to attempting to save Mr. Kohberger's life in the event of a conviction. And quite frankly, things have not been going well for him in the case, not since change of venue. All of the DP motions, and there have been many, everything from that it would be inhumane pursuant to the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution, to prosecutorial misconduct, to now Mr. Kohberger's alleged autism diagnosis being grounds to potentially get the DP taken off the table. And Ann Taylor and team lost every single battle that there was. So it appears that at some point there was a conversation with Mr. Kohberger about the dangers of going to trial in the event of a conviction, that capital punishment case. And we don't know what the evidence is so much. One of the things that you've heard me complain about since the beginning of the case is the astronomical amount of information that has been withheld from the public, and the concern that I have that this case will set a precedent, that you, the public, and I, the public, didn't know what a lot of the information was under seal. So I feel AT honestly let him down, in your opinion. Mambo's thinking prosecution would not back down on the DP. Mr. Rapp, there's reporting of a hearing on Wednesday. Okay, Tina, that's what I was waiting for. Tina, thank you so much. What needs to happen if this is in fact true? Judge Stephen J. Hippler will need to approve of any plea deal. Again, no plea deal gets entered until Judge Stephen J. Hippler signs off on it. Judge Hippler is the trier of the law, and that is his role. So if there is, I'm seeing that, Tina, I know you're on top of things. If there, that's my next question, because I just looked at the docket. I just did, I think, episode 747 of the Idaho versus Kohberger podcast. And I reported on the last two things on the docket that had to do with the defense's concerns regarding the juror questionnaires. Those were literally the last two things on the docket that were released today, the 30th of June. And my question was, well, if there's a plea deal, where's the hearing? There has to be a hearing formally notifying Judge Hippler of this fact, that the parties have reached a deal. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to throw this out for your consideration. I could be right. I could be wrong. I don't think that this would have been made public if the thought of a plea deal wasn't posited to Judge Stephen J. Hippler. What has he said? What has he said before? I am not a fan of surprises. I cannot imagine that if this is true, and again, the Goncalves family are confirming on their Facebook page that Mr. Kohberger indeed has taken a deal and they are not happy about it. It sounds like this was an arrangement. This was a negotiation between the state of Idaho and Mr. Kohberger and his defense team. And perhaps the families were not informed. But it's binding. If they entered into an agreement, it is binding because the case, remember, the case is the people of the state of Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohberger. The plaintiff are the people of the state. And so that while it is preferable to have the family members' blessings, maybe Mr. Thompson and company, I'm just speculating here, this is what we do as citizens under the First Amendment, perhaps they thought that because maybe one or more of the families really were gung-ho for the DP, that it wouldn't have mattered. So maybe they went ahead, negotiated the deal, and then let them know in retrospect. What are your thoughts, ladies? I think the prosecutor accepted the deal because their case was not strong enough for the DP. Robert, that might be true. We don't know. Hopefully, we're now going to get a look at the evidence. It would be great if Judge Hippler does what he said he was going to do at the beginning of the year and stop sealing so much information. With that Dateline episode, it was like that ship sailed, to some extent. So why is so much information still being sealed from the public? This was rough. I could see him. I could have seen him get life. Okay, that's your Mrs. D. I know the family wants answers, but answers won't bring them back. I agree. Joseph Hippler will sign. He made it clear he did not want to be there. Oh, Joseph is now referring to Judge Hippler's infamous words at the beginning of the case. That's true. What did he say? Remember, how did this who recalls how this matter even got before Judge Hippler? Who remembers? Does anyone remember how Judge Hippler, because of course, the jurisdiction for these crimes, Latah County, that is where the crimes happened. Latah County had jurisdiction over these crimes, and there was supposed to have been a trial. If you look at the case summary page, starting June 2nd, that got adjourned and canceled for the August 11th date that just got adjourned again to August 18th. It was because once Judge granted Mr. Kohberger's June 30th, 2024 motion for change of venue, they fought about that all year. It went from January 30th until the long trial. Remember, the end of August, there was a day-long trial in Latah County where Judge said this was going to be probably the most difficult decision of his entire career, whether to grant change of venue or not. He did. But what he did was quite unusual when he signed that order. It was the second week of September 2024. He said, yes, I'm going to grant the motion for change of venue, but I'm going to leave it up to the Idaho Supreme Court what the venue should be and leave it in their hands. And the Idaho Supreme Court came back. It was around September 12th, 2024, said the venue was going to be Ada County, which was one of the counties that the defense asked for. The defense asked for Ada County and a couple of other counties, Canyon County, and I believe one more. So the Idaho Supreme Court said, you know what? We're going to go ahead and grant you're going to go to Ada County. The judge is Judge Stephen J. Hippler. He was specifically appointed by the Idaho Supreme Court, Judge Hippler. That's how he got on the case. And since this case has been pending before Judge Hippler, there have been very few wins for the defense. They lost every single motion to strike the DP. They lost the motion for the Franks hearing, which is a very high standard anyway. There was a suppression motion that I felt was possibly winnable. I really did. But the defense just didn't argue standing. You ought to argue standing under a Fourth Amendment issue if you're saying that your Fourth Amendment rights were violated, which they failed to do, in my opinion. And they also, all of the in limine motions, they won a couple, but the major battles were lost. And I think perhaps what might have led to this is not just the motion to continue being denied, but the motion for the alternate perpetrators. I think that that may have been a big incentive for the defense to now sit down and to go, if maybe the state hasn't put anything, maybe there's been negotiations going on for the past 2 years. For all we know, we don't know. Hopefully, we're going to get some answers on Wednesday. Surely the prosecution discusses it with the fact. Well, Lily Shaw has brought up an excellent question. She has been following this case, I believe, from England, Lily. You're one of my very early followers, and I want to thank you for your support over time. Well, apparently, from what we're picking up from the Goncalves family page, the Goncalves family didn't know about this deal until it was signed and done for. And it may be becoming, Mr. Goncalves told me directly when he left a couple messages once in a blue moon on my podcast page. And he had said, I'd asked him, I said, would you? And he said, no, we want the DP. We want him, not necessarily because we want him, but we want to make sure that he can't see people, that he can't get into deals like supposedly BTK had made a book deal, made money. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what's been reported. They were not going to, it appears, ever agree to anything less than capital punishment in this case. And we don't know what the state has to think, it's a risk. Nothing's done. You never know what 12 people in a box are going. Look at what happened in Karen Reed. You'd never know what 12 people in a box are going to come back with, how they're going to look at the evidence. There is never anything like a done deal. You can sometimes look at the admissible evidence and come to some sort of a good conclusion as an attorney as to how a judge might, if you know the judge, but you don't know who the 12 people sitting in the box are going to be. These would have been the 12 most important strangers that Mr. Kohberger never met in his life, that basically would say whether he was guilty or not guilty. And then immediately going into the sentencing phase, then the issue of what is the punishment? Is it going to be life in prison, something short of that, or will it be the ultimate penalty of capital punishment by the squad? I mean, it's not even lethal. They introduced last year, or was it 2023, I believe, the new method because the lethal failed in one situation. That's right, Kathy, for sure. No one knows. That's right. We don't. And then look at what had happened with Dateline. Judge Hippler might be thinking that they're going to trial. They don't know who the source of the leak was. What if it turns out that it was someone on the witness list for the prosecution? Very good opportunity that if there was a conviction, it could get bumped down again. So this is where, I think as a lawyer, as people involved, and certainly as Mr. Kohberger's got to sit down and look at the pros and cons and then decide, hey, do I really want to take the chances? He's been in prison now. He has not seen the light of day since December 30th, 2022, when he was taken under arrest in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, spoke to apparently Detective Brett Payne, who flew out there and interviewed him. There's no video of the arrest by the Pennsylvania State Trooper, Leary, who signed the Pennsylvania Affidavit of Probable Cause. So he's been incarcerated continuously since December 30th, 2022, but big difference being on capital punishment row. I've got to be careful of what I say here on YouTube versus the county jail. So I'm finding this unbelievable, Lily. Okay. You continue to inform. Oh yes, Joseph, I'm committed to this case until the very end. That was the commitment that I made when I started the podcast. It was literally episode number 1, page 1 of the Affidavit of Probable Cause, and just did episode 747 regarding Judge Hippler's order. He entered it today, June 30th, 2025, regarding the state's second objections to the jury questionnaire. So I'm going to see this through till the end. All right, let's get some questions from you guys. Is this real or speculation? Granny Singapore asks the question that I asked. When I started to see multiple sources reporting it, that it was true, I had to sit down and say, okay, wait a minute. I went to the docket. I didn't see anything there, but it's after hours now. What time is it? It's getting close to the end of the day. It's 4:42, late Ada County time. But Granny Singapore, there was a notification on the Kaylee Goncalves family, their Facebook page. They started that fairly early on, and they have been very vocal in the case. When I saw the notification on the Goncalves family page on Facebook saying that it is true, there's a plea deal, and they are not happy about it. They are not happy about it. So when I saw that on the official Goncalves family page, I have to say to myself, this is probably true information. BK's family must be devastated knowing he committed this. Joseph, it might have been something else going through his head. The state just filed today. There were two new subpoenas in Pennsylvania for two witnesses to act as state witnesses. And I reported about it today on the podcast. The state of Idaho went to Judge Hippler with 4 ex parte out-of-state subpoenas, which we were wondering, okay, is that for the Kohberger family? Because they have said, dating back to the in limine proceedings, that they were going to call certain members of the Kohberger family to be their witnesses against their own son and or brother in this capital case. Perhaps that's something that was going through Mr. Kohberger's head. Is this for real or spec? Oh, I'm sorry. Granny, does that answer your question? We're going to continue reporting. Idaho News, was he forced into this? Clifton, was he forced into this? They're saying now that Wednesday, there's allegedly a hearing. There's nothing yet on the court docket. I'm going to check it right now to see if there is anything on the court docket in Ada County. If you'll bear for a second, but they're saying here that it is official. The Goncalves family has confirmed that there is a plea deal that was made already. Now, he's going to have to stand up in open court at some time. I mean, you've seen plea deals in other cases, other high-profile cases. What was the one family in Colorado where the father was pled guilty to the unaliving of his pregnant wife and 2 daughters? Do you know what the case is? He had to stand up in open court and say that he did commit it. That's a condition of Idaho cases of judicial interest. Let's take a look and see if there's anything on the case summary page. Nothing. Okay, the only 2 items so far that appear on the case summary page, new as of today, June 30th, I reported on. It's episode 647 of the Idaho versus Kohberger podcast. It's motion to seal, second notice of filing, defendant's additions, objections to the juror questionnaire, and the order that Judge Hippler just signed today, June 30th. Judge Hippler signed another order sealing information from the public, second notice of filing of defendant's additions, objections to the juror questionnaires. Let's go to the case summary page. This case summary page is 100 pages long now. So difficult to sift through. Let's see if there's any hearings that are showing for this week. Not as of yet. But yeah, the next hearing that's scheduled in the case is June 28th. That was that week-long hearing that came up on the amended scheduling order that reset by a week voir dire and jury trial. And then there's this mysterious hearing for 5 days that was supposed to be just between Mr. Kohberger and counsel. 5 days. You know the last time that they scheduled something for 5 days in this case? The preliminary hearing. That was supposed to be 5 days back in June of 2023. Of course, that was canceled, vacated once the grand jury came back with the indictment. But a 5-day hearing, very unusual in this case. And I've been up and down that docket, I don't know how many times in the past couple of years, because I have to report all of the events from the case summary page in the docket to my followers. I think with seeing how the judge is behaving, he knows he wouldn't get a fair trial. Chris Watts didn't even have to explain what happened. News is only saying BK takes plea deal. He says, yes, he will plead guilty to all 5 charges. Okay, Carmen, where are you getting that information from? Carmen is saying here that the only information that the media has at this time is that BK accepts a plea deal. A plea deal means you're guilty. You don't take a plea deal if you're not guilty. That's number one. Now, what Carmen is saying is that according to, and this is multiple news sources, I could see one of them getting it messed up. This has happened many, many times in this case, but I have seen probably reports from 10 different sources. And I said, what convinced me to go live is when I saw that notification on the Goncalves family Facebook page. So what Carmen is saying is that news is only saying BK takes plea deal to save his own life. That would tell us that the DP has been taken off the table. He will plead guilty to all 5 charges. Now, who knows what the 5 charges are that he is at this time until we see something official on the court record. What are the 5 charges and where are they located? We'd love to have co-conspirators plead down. Totally. Yeah. Sonny is totally stunned. Idaho News is reporting it. Okay. Idaho News. Clifton is saying that Idaho News. Well, remember when we just said very, very, very unusual for a 5-day hearing to be had starting July 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, and 1st. That was in the June 26th amended scheduling order, which amended the trial order that Judge Hippler put out back on October 9th. And that is what reset voir dire by 1 week and the trial by 1 week. In there, it said there is a hearing that is scheduled, no information regarding the topic. It's not going to be public. It was just scheduled between Mr. Kohberger, the counsel for the state, counsel for the defense, closed, sealed. 5 days, ending Friday the 1st of August, with voir dire starting the next court day, Monday, the 4th of August. Highly unusual, in my opinion. And the last time that there was ever a 5-day hearing set in this case was back in January of 2023, when the 2 sides agreed to a 5-day preliminary hearing. It was supposed to happen in June, and that got kicked off. That got canceled when the Latah County grand jury returned the indictment, as they did on May 16th, 2023. Remember, a couple days later, Mr. Kohberger was arraigned before Judge John Judge, and he stood silent. He did not plead to any of the charges. That's when Ms. Taylor infamously told Judge Judge, Mr. Kohberger is standing silent. That means he's not pleading guilty. He's not pleading not guilty. He's not saying anything. And therefore, Judge Judge entered the not guilty pleas. 5 counts is what he is scheduled to go to trial on. Count 1, burglary. And people have asked me many, many times, number 1, why is burglary count 1? Well, it may be going in sequence. Can't commit the unalivings if you're not in the house yet. And people have also asked, well, didn't break a door down. No one ever said it was any forced entry. It's not like, kicking down a door or something like that. It was burglary with the intent to commit another felony, the felony of unaliving. Count 1, burglary. It was punishable, I believe, up to 20 years in prison, and there would need to be restitution made and so forth. Counts 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the indictment were the ones that were subject to a possible sentence of the DP. Count 2 as to Maddie. Count 3 as to Kaylee. Count 4 as to Xana. Count 5 as to Ethan. We have never known why it is that the unalivings were in that sequence. We got a little bit of potential, if you believe the Dateline stuff that came out, that the unalivings began upstairs and then downstairs. That was the sequence of the crimes. But I've also heard, which also checks out, that that was in order of their dates of birth. In other words, of the four, Madison was the eldest by a couple of months or a month, not very much, over Kaylee. They were both 21 at the time of the atrocity. And then it was Xana, and then Ethan. Ethan was the youngest of the four. As a matter of fact, he only turned 20 like the end of October, and this happened November 13th. He was barely out of his teens, that young man. Hope you're feeling better. I'm pissed. Brian Enton said, BK said, yes, he will sign the plea deal. Theodore reports Brian Kohberger is plea. Okay, yeah, we're getting reports. We're getting reports all over. And like I said, I did not feel comfortable coming live today until I read the post on the Goncalves family page stating that it was true. Kathy mentioned an Alfred plea deal. Is that where he does? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get up there and not plead guilty to anything, but just basically say the evidence is so overwhelming against him. We're going to, there's got to be a hearing. If this is true, the parties have got to let Judge Stephen J. Hippler know. And I would, as I said, I would be absolutely shocked if they did not inform Judge Hippler that, or if Judge Hippler did not inquire, as all judges do. They're going to ask, like that's usually what's done at the final pretrial conference. You know, what's the potential for us not having to have trial? You know, what's the potential for, that's always asked at the final pretrial conference. We didn't hear that during the public session, but it might have been something that was inquired about during the private and closed session. You know, I can't imagine that they would have gone and announced this, or, you know, somehow it got out to the media if it weren't true. And it might have gotten through the media because the Goncalves family reported it. And then from there, you know, it just spread like wildfire. Burglary. Yeah, Joseph, that's exactly what the indictment says. And if you're interested in knowing exactly what the charges were for trial, count 1, first-degree burglary, count 2, Madison, count 3, Kaylee, count 4, Xana, count 5, Ethan. Go to the court docket. It's on the public record. It was filed May 16th, 2023. The indictment returned by the grand jury. That is what Mr. Kohberger was and is still scheduled to stand trial for. Bryant says, BK said, yes, hope you feel better. Michelle is not very happy about this. Why not, Michelle? I'll wait for the official court. Theodore, I'll wait for the official court documents. That's not a bad thing to do, is to wait for the official court documents to come down. I will definitely be looking to see something come up on the court document, because you know, Judge Hippler, it's fine. The word's gotten to Hippler that, you know, the media is reporting all this, that's, you know, it's going around like wildfire and so forth. If it's false, that's more infection into getting a fair trial. Down the rabbit hole, yeah. If this is a false rumor that was started, that would be a big problem, I would think. I really hope it's not a sick joke sent to the family. Lily, I don't know. I don't know. I think they got it, though. According to the Goncalves family page, they're saying that the prosecution did this without letting them know. CIA is getting desperate. Hold fast, Clinton. It's all over YouTube. Clinton, what do you mean? The other people are reporting the same thing, I'm sure. I am certain that this information is going to reach Judge Stephen J. Hippler's ears, and that we will be seeing some sort of a hearing. If this is a false rumor, let's just say, okay, until we see it in the court docket, it's really not true. You know, we have to see the court records. That's absolutely true. If this turns out, and a couple of people have asked now, what if this is false? Well, if this is false, there would be a major problem. And I would imagine that and it's not a delay. I get very upset when it's not a delay. It's a continuance. Motion for a continuance. Judge denied it, but then he continued the trial, didn't he? You know, that it was supposed to start approximately the 18th. Gee whiz, I don't get it. Yeah, gee whiz, I know that you're shocked. But It is. I just emailed Ann Taylor down the rabbit hole. You did. Okay. Let us know if you hear back. Did a plea deal. Why would they have just, well, good question from Theodore Becker. I mean, if they just had a plea deal, why would they just subpoena all those people from Pennsylvania? It just doesn't make any sense. The people from Pennsylvania, if you look at the documents in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Kohberger, they're online for you to review. They were signed by Judge Hippler, the certifications where Judge Hippler has to tell the Pennsylvania court, has to tell the Nevada court in the concern regarding the second roommate, not Dylan, the other roommate, and in Washington, Bethany, in Washington State, Judge Hippler had to sign a certification talking to the other judge. There's got to be some protocols and some requirements made under. There's a law that all 50 of the states, they cooperate regarding having witnesses that are in one state that might be needed for a big trial like this. Judge Hippler signed his certification. I'm the judge of this case. This witness is necessary to appear before trial based on the affidavit of, and it was, I believe it was Ann Taylor for most of them, although one of the other defense attorneys, Alyssa Mossoff, signed one of them as well. So it's the defense attorneys saying what these witnesses have in terms of knowledge. This has been in the works since March. So Judge Hippler signs the certifications, defense counsel or the state, because they've also subpoenaed out of state witnesses, then have to put together a packet. They need to hire either local counsel or, as the state of Idaho did, they were working with the state attorney in Pennsylvania to appear in court, because the attorneys here in Idaho can't go into court in Pennsylvania. They're not licensed to practice law in those states. So this has been in the work for many, many months. It's not like they just subpoenaed these witnesses last week. Somebody can ring ADA account before 5 o'clock. I'm in the UK. Lily Shaw, I bet Lena is calling them now. They're probably going to say, watch the docket. They're very, very helpful. And they have a really nice, they got a great web page that tells you if you have any information, contact us. You call them and they just basically, they say, send an email, and you don't really get very far with them. Jules Court, they told her to send an look at Mr. Mojo Rising. I just said that. Jules called and they told her to send an email. That's what I contacted them a couple of times after change of venue. I contacted the and you call the clerk's office. Where's has the judge entered send it in an email, send it. That's what they tell you. The only time anyone ever responded to me, you want to know, and all the time I've done the podcast, and I don't do it. I've done it maybe 3 times, 4 times maximum, is in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I contacted the press agent whose name's on the Pennsylvania website if you have any questions, and I asked about any subpoenas for the Kohberger family. Remember, the state said they were going to subpoena the Kohberger family to be their witnesses. So I contacted the clerk of court, and they said, well, you have to write to the press contact. And I did. And she got back to me like 45 minutes later and said, basically, if, we put it up right away on the website, just keep checking the website. Never heard back. I've contacted the Ada County Courthouse 2 or 3 times, usually regarding the status of orders, and I never heard back from them. So it doesn't surprise me that Jules called and said, you're right, LOL. Okay. That's what Jules did too. I'd be very, very shocked. I hope Jules does get a contact back, but being that it is now 5 p.m. in Ada County, I would imagine they're getting out of Dodge. They're probably getting hit with so many calls, people in person wanting to know what's going on in the clerk's office. Hello, everybody. Hi, Miller Time. Glad to see you, sir. Have you heard the news? What chance will the states have? That's something that I have asked myself. Miller Time and I had this conversation just the other day about the evidence. And, so much. I call it a Mount Everest of documents under seal. That is the one thing that I have been extremely concerned about the case, the precedent that it's setting. Because in the United States, the way that we have it set up here is that anyone should be able to walk into any courtroom, pretrial or trial, and watch proceedings. It's how we have a checks and balances system. It's how the founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution, and more importantly, we have to give a big shout out to the 13 original colonies who refused to sign off and ratify that Constitution until the Bill of Rights were implemented. That's the reason why we have those rights. It's not the framers. The framers were, they did the Constitution. It's a beautiful document, but the states said, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. We just got done fighting this big war. We had one king. We don't want to be subject to another king. It was Philadelphia was was where the central government was. And so the 13 original colonies demanded the Bill of Rights. And so that's where we have the First Amendment and Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth, all the way down, and all of the other amendments that have been put into place. So Miller Time is not very surprised, and not as if they had a problem with the public. The problem is they're trying to keep I know, Ted, Mr. Baker, it is, if you listen to my podcast, episode 1 through 747, continuing theme through that podcast is my concern about the secrecy of this case. I did one time, open trial, secret trial, and how many things that really didn't, in my opinion, need to be under seal. There's supposed to be a standard. Yes, there is a rule of court. Yes, there is a statute that allows a court, if good cause is shown, to seal things from the public disclosure. But my goodness, you have to, please look at the case summary page. It's 100 pages now. Anytime you see a lock and key like icon next to a document, that will tell you that document is under seal. Look at all the hearings that have been under seal. Look at all the documents that have been under seal. We really don't know what this case is all about. We still don't know if is there a second perpetrator? Is that the reason why maybe he agreed? This is just something that someone posited. Maybe, he agreed to give up a second perpetrator because remember what he supposedly said. Not confirmed from the Monroe County Jail, but he supposedly said, was anyone else arrested? Now, some people have said, well, he was at his family home. Maybe he was concerned that his parents might have gotten into trouble, might have been arrested. Or, some people went to, well, maybe there was another perpetrator out there. And hi, everybody. Hello. What chance will we hear? State's evidence, Joseph. I hope that we never see some of it. The crime scene or something I never want to see. I never had any interest in. I don't want to see. You see that type of stuff, you can't unsee it again. But I would like to see what the state's evidence is. I would like to see what the state's evidence is. They had a problem with the public. This guy on the spectrum, they manipulated him to do this. I can't believe Ann Taylor would allow this to happen. Susan, I have to say, I have not been a fan of the defenses. I really have not been. I think that there was a suppression motion that they could have easily won. Did not argue standing. Judge Hippler asked about standing. She went back to arguing policies and procedures regarding IgG DNA, all the time that was spent on, and then they stopped. They don't even use it at trial. That just a big turning point for me. But then also, they spent all of this time attempting to save his life, right? All of these motions to strike the DP. A lot of them were policy issues that really were out of Judge Hippler's hand. It was more the legislature should decide whether or not to strike it. Who knows where Mr. Kohberger was arrested? What state? We should, do a big pop quiz. What state was he arrested in? He wasn't arrested in Idaho. He wasn't arrested in Washington, where he had been attending college for several months and working as a teaching assistant. He was absolutely, y'all got it. Pennsylvania. Now, Idaho appears to be a very, they're not against the DP, right? Not against the DP. Seems like they have the DP, like a lot of states, Texas, Florida, they're going to use it. Mr. Kohberger was arrested December 30th, 2022, right? He was in the Monroe County Jail until he was in the custody of the Pennsylvania authorities until they literally got off the plane at the Pullman Moscow airport the evening of the 4th of January. That's when Pennsylvania turned over custody of Mr. Kohberger to the authorities in Idaho. The newly elected governor in the state, Miller Time we had this conversation, right? Mr. Kohberger was arrested in Pennsylvania. The governor of the state of Pennsylvania, Joshua Shapiro, Governor Shapiro, if you look him up, he was the attorney general for many years. His incumbent, he was elected, he took office in January of 2023. Very, very anti-DP. He said immediately he was going to work to get the DP struck, taken off the books in Pennsylvania. Not, the last time anyone was subjected to the DP in Pennsylvania, 1999. Very much, the governor was very, very much anti-DP. He gave a speech like within the first few weeks of taking office, vowing. He says he thinks it's inhumane. A lot of people are subject to it who should, that are innocent. And then you find out later through the Innocence Project that they were on death, and just, a lot of people, religious beliefs. They don't believe that the government should ever, under any circumstances, take someone's life. So why you rushing to leave Pennsylvania, was a thought that we were discussing. Why rush back to Idaho when you're in a state where the executive who has to, if you fight extradition, has to literally force you to go back to Idaho where they have the DP. So I always question, and, we had some discussions. Well, maybe they did have that conversation with Mr. Kohberger, but remember, he was wanting to get back to Idaho to exonerate himself. But I always wondered what the rush was to leave, and maybe the strategic move might have been see if you can get the DP taken off the table as a condition to having him come back. Because if he was fighting it, if he was going to file a writ of habeas corpus also, he could, it could have taken a year and a half before he would have been forced to go back to Idaho and just basically say, look, we want you to take the DP off the table. That's it. A lot of time was spent. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, you're spending all of this time now. What about preparing to reasonable doubt? What's the strategy? So, and with all of the motions that have been denied, they really haven't won very much. It wasn't looking good. Hippler is big on law cases, and Ann Taylor doesn't present them enough for him in her arguments. Yeah, do PA moratorium. All right. Mojo Rise, a PA moratorium on the DP, right? In your opinion, it's his ego, Miller Time. Do you think that maybe Ann Taylor, and I'm trying to think who the attorney was out in PA that represented him, and he basically told him, look, don't tell me anything about what's going on in Idaho. That's for you and yourself, you and your attorney out there. Maybe they did try to say, hey, look, don't be in such a rush. Stay in the Monroe County Jail. Your parents are close by. That you got a governor who's very much against the DP. You're only going back if he signs it, or you go through this long proceeding. They're probably going to seek the DP on this one. So don't rush. So from there, I had some questions on strategy, and I have had, a lot of the losses that they got, the orders that were entered, I felt Judge Hippler was within his discretion. The one thing that I questioned, I didn't like that he, on the order, alternate perpetrators, that he seemed to make findings of fact that it was one perpetrator, that the perpetrator arrived by car. Those are jury questions. If it's one perpetrator, if it's 10 perpetrators, if they arrived by skateboard, bicycle, walked, were inside the house, not for the judge. This isn't a trial by judge. And I came out, I didn't like that in his opinion. It's his ego. Yeah, the defense strategy could have been better, but I didn't like the yeah, a lot of people. But you know what, Gee Whiz, I want to posit this question to you, because a lot of people have said, boy, oh boy, here we have the state of Idaho agreed to a 5-day preliminary hearing, and they waived speedy as it relates to the preliminary, because the preliminary hearing should have been a lot sooner than June. But they agreed to waive that because I think Ms. Taylor was wanting to get some discovery back before she would go to. But the preliminary hearing, who's presiding over it? Who's going to make the determination if there's information there to bound them over for trial? Judge Megan E. Marshall. Who's Judge Megan E. Marshall? Judge Megan E. Marshall looked at that affidavit of probable cause, accepted it, wrote the order finding probable cause, and also issued the warrant as Detective Payne asked for on page 18 for Mr. Kohberger's arrest without bail. So we will never know what might have happened. We never will know. But in my mind, if Judge Marshall signed off on the order of probable cause and the warrant, I don't know. We're all speculating here, but do we really think that she would, hey, I made a mistake here. I shouldn't have signed the probable cause up. I don't know. I'm not the brightest star in the world, no pun intended, but the clues were there early on, in your opinion. Yeah. There was a lot of people, oh, this is a circumstantial case. A lot of people have been convicted on circumstantial evidence. The biggest thing, okay, the sheath that, the sheath didn't unalive anybody, but there wasn't word one from the defense that wasn't his DNA on there. And so there was some that it was planted, but who's going to get up and testify before the jury that it was planted? Somebody's going to get up and testify. It can't be a theory. We all shine on. Jurors had questions on DM. Yeah, they did. They had some questions. There's no doubt about it. Who knows? Again, it's the jury. The jury is the finder of fact. They would be the ones who would afford whatever credibility, lack of credibility as to any of the witnesses, DM, all of them. Now we have the DoorDash driver, MM, allegedly. That's the jury's decision. So maybe the state was looking and saying, yeah, we got some evidence here, but you never know how 12 people in a box are going to react to such things as, 7 hours before you call law enforcement. We really don't know what happened in the house during those 7 hours. We have we would have hopefully found out at trial, and maybe witnesses, you think they're going to stand up well, and they don't. The ones that you think are really going to be strong and going to do well, they're the ones that don't do well. And the ones that you have questions about, it's the other way around. Everything is flipped in litigation. As they should have it. We all shine on. Do you practice law? I'm retired, Joseph. No, I'm retired. I teach and I'm retired. And I do my podcast. That's it. I make this comment many times. I believe the crime itself took place. Miller Time, you've said, many people say that. They feel that it is an incorrect timeline. We go back to, doesn't that go back to one of the family members coming back and saying 3 a.m. is the darkest hour and quoting, I don't know if it was Whitman or whoever was quoted, why would 3 a.m. be the darkest hour? Why wouldn't 4 a.m. be the darkest hour? So Miller Time, many people join you and say, I believe, it's 2 a.m. Okay. I believe why do you think it was between 3 and 3:20, if you wouldn't mind me asking you, Miller Time? That was Ethan's mom. Okay, Susan, it was. You're right. That was Ethan's mom. She came in, I think, fairly early. And so because the timeline originally, going back now, way back to the early days of the case, wasn't, they were saying that the timeline was between 3 and 5 a.m., I believe, and that they were looking for the occupant or occupants of a 2013 Elantra, something like that. And then it wasn't an Elantra, it was another type of car. And then it became the year of Mr. Kohberger's car. We still don't know how that happened. I made this comment very time, 2 o'clock. It was Ethan's mom. This could take a while. Do you think they'll lift the guy? I hope so, Mojo Rising. I am, Judge Stephen J. Hippler's not a fan of surprises. For what it's worth, I'm not a fan of this gag order. I'm sorry, Judge John Judge. He hated it when it was called a gag order, but what is it? It's the non-dissemination order. That meant we never, even now, if the non-dissemination order wasn't in effect, Bill Thompson would be able to give an interview tonight. He guaranteed he'd be on television, confirming or denying whether a plea deal was made. At least that. But they can't. You think of any other high-profile case at all where either during the investigative stage, law enforcement comes out and gives you a little bit of the, gives you a taste of the evidence. We never saw suspect vehicle 1 until the in limine filings. Defense filed a couple of pictures. State comes back and files a couple of pictures. That was the first time that the public ever, that was what, March and April of 2025, these crimes took place in November of 2022. What was the big secret about suspect vehicle 1? Why wasn't it published? Like every other law enforcement agency will, even if you just have grainy photos. And what's the deal with having 2 photos of suspect vehicle 1? This is what confused me. In the Bolo, one with a sunroof, one without a sunroof. It was like, I'll give my opinion as I do, too much was under seal, and it really didn't need to be. And I'm concerned, my concern is about the precedent that this case will set of secret, secret proceedings. This is not how this country is supposed to operate. We've got to be a checks and balances system to make sure that it's operating correctly and that people are not abusing authority. Do you think they'll? Yeah, I hope so. That gag order can't be lifted too soon for me. She is okay. The first timeline was from the corner on camera. Susan, you're saying first timeline was from the corner on camera. It said 2:00 a.m. Okay, here's Miller time. Banfield police body cam. I believe the car in the camera at 2:53 was suspect vehicle 1. Now, I have got to put my glasses on Miller time because I missed that car at 2:53 a.m. You're thinking Miller time is saying the infamous, I mean, what about this? What about a jury saying, you mean to tell me you had 2 members of the Moscow Police Department? You know how close, where the undercover car was parked is literally, you walk, I don't know how many steps, and you're right there at 1122 King. They were right there. You had 2 members of the Moscow Police Department right there, a few, yards away from 1122 King Road, and saw and heard nothing. But yet the same officer during the one body cam, when they had one noise complaint around the corner, somehow picked up a boom box from 1122 from way across, the back, and with multiple houses in between. But they didn't notice anything. They didn't see anything. I don't know how a jury might react to something like that. You're in denial. The 911 call was at 3. Okay, Miller time. Again, he's talking about the 911 call at 3:01 a.m. Do you think, Miller time, that there was some rumors going around, completely unsubstantiated, that the 911 call at 3:01 a.m. was not about then the nefarious activity that was going on in Banfield with, the youngsters running across the field? And it was for 1122, maybe screams, maybe concerns about what was going on. Do we think Bryan told his family attorneys the truth? Joseph, why wouldn't he? He's going to have to stand up. He's going to have to, at some point, stand up. We haven't heard him speak, right? In front of Judge Hippler. He said a few words to Judge Megan E. Marshall when he first, returned to Idaho, that he understood certain things, and to Judge, but we haven't heard him say a single word to Judge Stephen J. Hippler in all of the hearings that have been had. He's going to have to stand up in open court and say that he's taking a plea deal of his own volition, that no one forced him, that he came to this conclusion on his own. Because the last thing Hippler's going to want to do if he's going to be signing off on this is for, in 2 years from now, there's buyer's remorse and comes back and says he was forced into this. So he will have to stand up in open court and acknowledge that this is his decision. So maybe then if there's really a plea deal, we won't be seeing a trial. No, that's it. If there's a plea deal, there is no trial. As we've said many, many times on the Indie Zone podcast and on here on YouTube, Mr. Kohberger is considered not guilty under the eyes of the law unless one of 2 things happens. He either pleads guilty or he is adjudicated guilty at trial. That's it. He pleads guilty. There is no trial. There's no need for a trial if he pleads guilty to those 5 counts. I hope he says where the weapon was hidden or tossed. Yeah, he is guilty and pleading guilty. End of. Top Cat 88. Susan, yes, I can. People take pleas of guilt out of fear of pressure every day. Question I asked about a week or two ago. You said we could talk about it after the trial. Yeah, sure, Miller time. I won't promise I'm going to answer it. But yeah, please feel free. Feel free. That is why law enforcement kept the phone. What do you mean, Miller time? That is why law enforcement kept the phone. I intend on committing. I believe it was from Kaylee's phone. You think the call came from Kaylee because they were up. They were up at that time, right? What about the shock of the information? Hitler, he gives things and he takes things away. What about when we learned from Hitler that Kaylee and Madison and Dylan and Bethany were all gathered up in Kaylee's room at 2:00 in the morning, 2:00 until whatever time that call was placed to the private driver to see if he was still driving, to see maybe we were going to go out again and perhaps get some food. The two girls that didn't go to the grub truck, maybe they were hungry. They wanted some food. We'll, forget that. So they were up and then they went into the barrage of calls, right? There were the 9 calls from 2:26 until 2:54 principally from Kaylee's phone, but I think 3 of them from Madison's phone. The question is, but were they really from Madison? Were they all from Kaylee? Because sometimes, people will, okay, well, he's not picking up on my phone. Let me use your phone and pretend I'm you, or was it really they were both together trying to reach him? Yeah. Moscow. I believe it was from Kaylee's phone. If this is factual, no, Susan. Yeah, if he pleads guilty, no trial whatsoever. Okay. What can we expect? Yeah, Liz. Good point. Ethan and Xana were not home like we were told. Apparently, PCA very clearly said that. Who was it? It was Bethany who confirmed that. Ethan and Xana got home at approximately 1:45, right? And then we find out from Judge Hitler that at 2:00, Ethan and Xana weren't home. So the device timing advanced expert said, let it slip that he solved a quadruple within. What is it with all of these loose slips all of a sudden? Everybody's giving interviews. I heard about that. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, Lily, but I had heard that I think it was Hunter and his girlfriend that were on Good Morning America this morning. Then we have this alleged DoorDash driver who is speaking to law enforcement. I'm the DoorDash driver. I have to give testimony. Everybody is now we're hearing reports from this supposed ex-federal agent who's now going off on his own. And he was on one of the podcasts, Lawyer and he's talking about the Kohberger case. Okay, Kathy, I asked, do you think that some of the information from the court and the prosecution side was telling tales? I hope not. I got to go back to my, you would think that I wouldn't be so naive all these years later, but I would think that if a lawyer who's an officer of the court is filing a document in a court case, that they're being truthful. I refuse to, I guess, accept that someone would not be truthful if they're signing their name and their bar license to a document, because that is a part of an oath that you take, that you will show candor to the tribunal. So I have to. It's going to be really hard for me to accept the fact that any attorney would knowingly tell something that was untruthful in a court filing to a tribunal. It could all go away. Hi, Toes, quote by the state of Idaho. Molly, a friend of Bill Thompson, clearly said on pain cam recording when he pulled her over. Good point. Okay. Yeah, it's like, where are all these body cam footage? They were around from 2022, 2024. I look at the date of the body cam footage. I think it was the first one that came out of this allegedly the DoorDash driver, September 4th, 2024. The first, I said, oh my gosh, that's right when Judge was getting ready to sign the order regarding change of venue. That's the first thing I thought. So maybe she was so talkative, if it is her, because all of this was in the news. Remember when the experts appeared at the various hearings on the motion for change of venue? They said that whenever there was a major appeal, when the indictment came down, whoop, you see the popping up of interest in the case. Motion for change of venue. It was televised. There was a lot of interest. And I wondered if she was so talkative in that first video, if it is her, if she has anything to do with the case, if she is the DoorDash driver, which Detective Payne was so ambiguous about in the PCA, if it was because the issue of change of venue was in the news at that time. And I have to believe the only reason for this is BK realized he had no way of being found not guilty. Stay alive, slim chance, but you can fight another day. Hitler won't allow any exonerating evidence. Yeah, Hitler should continue to find Leaker as yes. Oh, absolutely. Joseph Rapp. I 1000% agree with you. No matter what happens here, it's not just a leak. There were exactly three non-dissemination orders. The two sides, Ms. Taylor, Bill Thompson, January 4th, 2023. This is day 4 of the case. Kohberger's arrested December 30th. Go to Judge Marshall and say, we would like you to sign this proposed non-dissemination order. We agree. We got to keep this. And Judge Marshall signed it. She signed a second one later in January, but the one that is the operative non-dissemination order was signed by Judge in June. I think it was like June 22nd, 24th, around that time of 2023. It has never been set aside. You had the Media Coalition going up to the Supreme Court of Idaho, trying to get it set aside. They said, nope, you got to go down to Latah County. Judge said, nope. That is Judge Hitler said in the order of May 15th, 2025, said it in both of the orders, but the one that went to the state had more stern information because he said in there that I believe that this leak came from the state side. Didn't say anything like that to the defense. And that's consistent with what the Dateline people said. They said people close to the investigation. And they tried to contact the defense. Defense wouldn't speak with them. What has happened, if this is true, if it is someone, law enforcement, someone associated with the case who had the temerity to take documents that might not have ever been admitted into the case, some of it that might have, and decided that they were going to give it to media and they were going to decide who media was, that is contempt of a court order. All of the times that the public has been told, nope, you can't see anything. You hear me saying in some of the podcasts, do you mean to tell me every bit of evidence maybe of a tree or a trash can, you couldn't redact something, some video portion, and give it to the public? You're saying everything is under seal. So we've been told for 2.5 years, nope, you are not entitled to see anything here because, okay, we understand Mr. Kohberger has a right to, and this and that, but what about the public's right? What about the First Amendment? Before you see the Sixth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment comes the First Amendment. That must have been put there because it was rather important to the framers of the Constitution. It was like the First Amendment continuously took a back seat here. So now we have someone who the jurist, Judge Stephen J. Hitler, said is on the state side. We have not heard anything since May 15th other than what the state said in opposition to the continuance motion. It's the bottom of page 12, top of page 13. It's on the docket. You can look it up. It was filed June 5th, 2025. They said, no, we don't want a continuance, and we are committed to complying with the non-dissemination order and finding the person or persons responsible. So at least as of June 5th, 2025, it appears the state didn't know which side. Some people, what could have come from the defense? Yeah, it could have come from the defense side, sure. But I got to put my money with Judge Hitler. If he's saying in a document, and then you will do these other things, they had to do a lot more in that court order. Whoever had the temerity to release that documentation in defiance of the court order, where the public has been told for 2.5 years, you can't see a garbage can that's depicted in a video because it needs to be under seal. That person needs to be, as Judge Stephen J. Hippler said, held to account, quote unquote. It's page 1 of the May 15th, 2025 orders. Whatever happens in this case, I sincerely hope that there's follow-up with respect to that matter. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Miller time. I hope you will, because you got me wondering here. Family's not told, but sent letters. Oh, okay. Is that how they found out? Exhibit A with the prosecution later state Exhibit A is irrelevant now. Don't know. That's interesting. So, okay. So what can we expect will happen now? Well, number one, we have heard unconfirmed rumors that there is going to be some type of a hearing day after tomorrow, Wednesday, which sounds right. They probably not enough time to get a hearing called for tomorrow, although I guess it's a possibility. Judge Hippler, he has done other hearings on very short notice. So we are going to keep our eyes peeled on that docket for you. And the moment we see anything come up, any activity on the 4th District's YouTube channel, we will, of course, let you know. But Wednesday would probably be the last opportunity to have a hearing before, because I think it's the 3rd and 4th. A lot of courts are closed both days. Wednesday, they're closed like Thursday and Friday for the long holiday weekend. So you're talking, if there's no hearing by Wednesday, then it's not going to happen until the following Monday. And can you imagine, there would be such wildfire of information in mass media amongst the YouTubers, podcasters, and so forth. And just, your general public. A lot of people are invested in this case. I've got people following me from Japan. One of my first followers is from Japan on the podcast. I don't know where he found it. If it's on Amazon, on Spotify, on Apple, where he found it. But he's invested in this case and he wants to know the truth. And we said we are committed to finding the truth, whichever path it leads us, in the name of Kaylee and Maddie and Xana and Ethan. Particularly Xana, all four but it appears from, how much these leaks are true, that Xana was up. She was not asleep. The other three might have been in some, maybe Kaylee too, but Xana was supposedly on TikTok. She had just received this order and was awake. If that's true, the final moments of her life, what fear and turmoil of seeing, the boogie coming into your house when you're just sitting there and you're on TikTok and you're responding to videos and silly things that people do on TikTok, and the next minute you're in the middle of this nightmare. We are committed to following up in this case until the end in search of the truth. So next, there has to be a hearing before Judge Stephen J. Hippler. Would imagine at that time, I can't imagine the Goncalves family has gotten it wrong. I put my trust in what they have said on the Facebook page, that this deal happened. So there has to be a hearing before the court, where the parties formally notify the judge. The judge has got to approve. He's got to approve of the terms of this agreement. And ladies and gentlemen, as I've said it once, I've said it twice, I can't imagine that there would have been word going out to the families of this deal if they didn't say, hey, judge, we're close to a deal. What if this happens, would you be amenable to signing off on it? That type of thing, because you don't want to do this, and tell the fan, and then the judge, oh, no, sorry. No, I'm not signing off on this. You're going to trial. Nope, I don't approve of this. So be a hearing. And at some point, I think the families are going to have their day where they're going to make their victim impact statements. And that will be a day that I will not look forward to. I will tell you that right now, where they will get up and they will say what their lives have been like since November 3rd, what it was like before November 13th, what it was after November 13th. And there is no need for mitigation, right now, because they've agreed to a deal. And the whole point of mitigation was to try to save his life. And then Judge Hippler will sentence him. And then he goes to the Ada County Jail for whatever apparent, day or couple of days. And then he's turned over to the state officials, and he goes to wherever his next location will be in the prison system. I followed it from day one and all day on numerous platforms that there was non-bias. Yeah, it's hard to take anything still as true in this case. Thank you much, Kathy. Best reporting till the next. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that. Not even a press con. Well, they can't, Mr. Mojo Rising. They can't. The non-dissemination order, as I've said, if that non-dissemination order was not in place, guaranteed there would have been something. You might have even seen both sides, Ms. Taylor for the defense and, just announcing something. They can't say anything. They would violate that non-dissemination order, and that would be contempt of court. So they can't. Please make sure you hit. Yes. Oh, thank you. Yes. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. We're not done yet covering this case. And I've been asked if I'm going to continue. I think Miller Time actually asked me this question. A couple of, maybe I'm thinking of one of our other members, if I was going. When I originally started my podcast, it's housed on Spotify. That's where the home base is. And I did all types of independent things, but book reviews, music. I'm all into anything independent. I don't like mass anything. And I've been a fan of true crime for a very long time. I don't like all of the photos or the 911 calls or anything like that. I'm more into how did they solve the case? What were the victims? What were they like in life? Their family members, and what can we do to help to prevent something like this from ever happening again? And when it was like, okay, if you're going to cover the Kohberger case, you either have to cover it 100% or you don't cover it at all, because it's just too big with the First Amendment issues. And is it multiple? Was he framed? Is he this next mass unaliver? Why would he's no background? What it came to me and said, if I'm going to cover this case, I have to dedicate myself 100% to it. And I'm very happy that we do have at least what I'm leaving to this case is this podcast, which is, as I've said, it's permanently on Amazon. It's permanently on Apple. It's permanently on iHeartRadio. It's in the Ukraine somewhere. It is, and it's for free. It will always be for free. That if someone in 10 years wants to learn about this case, and you look at that mess of a docket, you look at that mess of a case summary page, well, you come onto YouTube, you plug in whatever you're interested in. If you're interested in change of venue or IGG, it will pull up the episodes 5 minutes or less where we break it down for you, tell you what I think is important. But then I always say, look at the documents. I think every one of my members is perfectly capable of reading the documents. It's not as, we try to, in the legal community, try to make things, I think, a lot more difficult than it has to be. Motion, what's the motion's an application for a court order? What are the briefings? The briefings are motion, response, and reply. What's the, if they want to share, because I love teaching, I've done a practice law, I've done all types of things in my life. And what I love doing more than anything is teaching. Thank you, Miller Time, for your support of me from the beginning. So I said, we're going to cover this case. I was just going to do the 18 pages of the PCA. It was going to be episode 1 through 18. I said, absolutely not. Got to cover the case until the end. And then my legacy is that podcast that's going to probably be now. We're at 745. We're probably going to have about 1,200 episodes when we're done. I mean, there's still a lot more that needs to be done through this plea deal, through sentencing and everything else. And then we're going to move on to, I've got a couple of other cases that I'm looking at and there will be no 100% because this was too difficult. I mean, there was nights when waking up in the middle of the night and thinking about them and what they went through and the fear that they have had in there and who could have done this and why would someone do this and what can we do to prevent it from happening again to anyone else, that you send your children to college and they don't come home. It was it was just too difficult of a journey. It's been really hard, just personally, professionally, to cover this case like this because I've been up and down that docket so many times. And like I say, it's somebody says, oh, well, the DoorDash driver, she was that's the week that Judge was considering change of venue. I mean, that's how deep we got into the case. And I have so many people here, like Miller Time. Hey, Viviana, how are you? I'm glad to see you. What do they say? and pursued it according to KXLI up here in Spokane. Thank you. So we're going to take this through the end, through sentencing. And thank you, Sunny Days, for being, I'm happy to be your decoder. That's what I'm here for. We're going to take this to the end. I hope that we see this evidence. I hope we see this evidence, some of it. I hope that we never see some of it. And I hope that, now you say you can rest. How are you going to rest in peace when your child is taken from you like this? I don't know. Kathy, have you ever experienced a case with this much? No, Mr. Mojo Rising, never. When I first practiced law, I worked in the public defender's office for about 6 months, at the end of a law school. And we dealt with, they just gave you misdemeanors. Okay. You weren't going to deal with anything heavy, but I did sit a second chair in a couple of cases, got to know some criminal proceedings. Absolutely not. And this was Florida. So we had the DP and there were DP cases that were going on. I have never experienced a case with this much secrecy. I don't understand the secrecy. And I think the secrecy is just a bad precedent. I don't like it. I think the First Amendment took a real beating in this case. Another time, your name comes up first. Hey, I'm glad it comes up first for something. At least I'm first for something. Ask me how I did in the Orlando run a couple of weeks ago. I came in maybe 131st. So that's good news there. Thank you, Lily. I don't know how much I'm rocking right now because I took a little bit of a spill, and that's why I'm not able to be on camera tonight with you all. Wish I could have been here with you. Shady from day one. Susan, what do you feel was shady? Do you feel that there should have been more transparency from day one regarding the case? Hi there, my favorite YouTuber. Hey, thank you, Ms. Coupon Queen. I appreciate it. I just took an Uber. I would have just taken an Uber. The whole investigation that I think that there should have been. Judge Hippler even said in January we're going to, I've told you guys, knock it off. When the press went to him, I think he got a little concerned that the press were going to go to the Idaho Supreme Court a second time. So he said, you remember when he said that he said, hey, you got to stop coming. I told you guys, keep coming to me. You got to show up. And then he keeps signing. Where's the good cause? It wasn't in there. He's just continued to sign things under seal. I think that there would have been a lot more understanding over the facts of the case if there weren't. So Viv, you're in Spokane and you're reporting that according to KXLY, they're local, that Ann pursued it. Ann did. Okay. I'm hopeful. I am so hopeful that if this here, does anyone hear anything else regarding a possible hearing in front of His Honor Judge Hippler on Wednesday regarding this matter? I hope so, because really next time for a possible hearing in front of the court to confirm these matters might not be until until the end of the July 4th holiday, which will be sometime next week. So the whole investigation. Any other questions anyone has, or any comments, or any information that you have, any inside information? Okay. Yes, they said she went to the prosecution, then Thompson agreed it would spare endless. Okay. So it was to try to spare the appeals, is the information that Viv is getting locally out of Washington State. Thank you. Okay. So I guess the next thing, I'm going to keep an eye on the docket. And I know we have some content creators that are in here that I've appreciated so much. I've appreciated their reporting, their passion. I love that this channel has and always have had people from both sides of the fence, whether you felt Mr. Kohberger was guilty from day one, whether you felt he was not guilty from day one. People have been really great and open, and we don't see the type of fighting that we sometimes see in other channels, and the respect for everyone's opinion I greatly appreciate. So now we're going to wait for this hearing. Hopefully what we heard about Wednesday is true. We will then let you know if and when that hearing is scheduled. Going to have to go to the court let them know, let the court know officially, yes, Judge Stephen J. Hippler, we have come to an agreement, and this is what the terms are. And then at some point, and that may even happen Wednesday. He might even ask Mr. Kohberger Wednesday in open court, and that might be the first time that you'll see him stand up and admit, yeah, I'm doing this of my own free will and my own free volition. So stay tuned, everyone. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do, because we still have a lot more work before we're going to end this chapter of at least this portion of my life. And I have been so blessed and so thankful for everyone that has joined me. I have some people that have been with me since the episode number 1 of the podcast, some that have just come recently, and I appreciate everyone. I think we were all in this for one reason and one reason only, and it was the search for the truth of what happened and to ensure that there was some accountability in the names of Kaylee and Madison and Xana and Ethan. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, I just want to sign off, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with me today. Until next time, everyone, thank you.